Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parajikacharya Stotra Satis Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. BBT founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gauda Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale. Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Prachadine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschachadesha Tadine. Hare Krishna. I feel like I'm facing this way and everyone's sitting over on this side. It's okay, you don't need to move, just I need to adjust. So it's very wonderful to be here with all of you this morning. Thank you so much for being present for Bhagavatam class, and also thank you to Prabhu Vishnu Prabhu and the devotees for inviting me to come and be here. It's always a great honor and privilege to come to Sri Sri Radha Govinda Mandir and be in the association of the ecstatic, enlivened devotees here. So nice to be with all of you. Thank you for the wonderful kirtan, Prabhu. And this morning we're going to be reading from, or continuing reading from, the 4th canto of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam. And the 4th canto, if I'm not mistaken, is, yes, entitled The Creation of the Fourth Order. Sounds like something out of Star Wars, right? The creation of the Fourth Order. So this is an interesting topic matter being covered here. And we're up to the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj. And today we'll be reading from the 9th chapter. Text 27. It looks like it's up there on the board already. Have I got this correct? Looks like I don't have it correct. Okay, no. That's right, 4927, is that the correct verse? Yeah? Okay. Seems some confusion. Am I correct? Yeah? Okay. So we'll start with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Still feeling like something might not quite be right with the verse. Are we good, or is there supposed to be a different verse? It is 27, so it is correct, yeah? Okay. Because if somehow I got it wrong, no problem. Just tell me the correct verse and we'll take it from there. But 27 is correct? Okay. Sopi sankalpajam Vishnu padasevo pasaditam prapya sankalpa nirvanam nati prito bhyagat puram sopi sankalpajam Vishnu padasevo pasaditam prapya sankalpa nirvanam nati prito bhyagat puram sopi sankalpajam Vishnu padaseva pasaditam prapya sankalpa nirvanam nati prito bhyagat puram. Someone else would like to try, please. Sankalpajam Vishnu Sankalpajam Vishnu word for word. Saha, he, Dhruva Maharaj, api, although, sankalpajam, the desired result, Vishnu, of Lord Vishnu, padaseva, by serving the lotus feet, upasaditam, obtained, prapya, having achieved, sankalpa, of his determination, nirvanam, the satisfaction, na, not, atipritaha, very much pleased, abhyagad, he returned, puram, to his home. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. Thus, he returned to his home. Purport by His Divine Grace. By worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord in devotional service, as instructed by Narada Muni, Dhruva Maharaj achieved the desired result. His desire was to get a very exalted position, excelling that of his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. Although it was a somewhat childish determination, because Dhruva Maharaj was nothing but a small child. Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is so kind and merciful that he fulfilled Dhruva's desire. Dhruva Maharaj wanted a residence more exalted than any ever occupied by anyone else in his family. Therefore, he was offered the planet in which the Lord personally resides, and his determination was completely satisfied. Still, when Dhruva Maharaj returned home, he was not very much pleased. For although in pure devotional service there is no demand from the Lord, because of his childish nature, he had demanded something. Thus, although the Lord also fulfilled his desire, he was not very pleased. Rather, he was ashamed that he had demanded something from the Lord, for he should not have done this. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitangena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Gena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the verse again. Sopi sankalpa jam Vishnu pada sevo pasaditam prapya sankalpa nirvanam nati prito bhyagapuram. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. Thus he returned to his home. So it seems there's a bit of a conundrum here in this text. Anyone picks up on what the conundrum might be? Anyone knows what a conundrum is? It means something that's seems, it should be one way, but it's looking very much like it's a different way, so it's kind of confusing. There seems to be some confusion here. Anyone's picking up on what the confusion might be? Exactly. And not only did he get everything he wanted, but it says in the verse very clearly that he did that by worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord. So he got everything he wanted, and he was worshiping the lotus feet of the Lord. And in the purport, one of the first things Srila Prabhupada states is he also did that worship under instruction of his spiritual master. So if you ask me, that's a little bit of a conundrum. And when I read this verse, I thought, well, that's it. Let's pack it all up and go home, because I don't know if there's much hope for me. If Dhruva Maharaj isn't going to be happy. And then I thought in the verse in Bhagavad Gita, it's the statement, Susukam kartam avyayam. Everyone knows what this means? Susukam kartam avyayam. It means the devotional service is joyfully performed. Joyfully performed. And here we have Dhruva Maharaj, who, by the way, takes up probably at least 1/3 of the entire 4th canto with his glorifications. And he's also coming in a line of exalted personalities. And here we find that he's going back home, not back to Godhead, but going back home to his abode. And he is not pleased. He's not happy. So when I read this, one of the first things that I thought of was a specific personality that was in a similar situation, also another exalted soul, who had accomplished so much, and yet he found himself also unhappy. Anyone knows who I might be thinking of? Right, Srila Vyasadeva. He had put all of the Vedas into written form. He had encapsulated all of them for the entire future, because he knew in the future people wouldn't be able to remember what happened yesterday. Does anyone remember what happened yesterday? Not really. We forget what to speak of last week. So he put it all into writing. Then he also wrote the Mahabharata, and then he wrote the Vedanta Sutras. And still, after all of that, and it was all also done as a service to the Lord, and he himself is actually the literary incarnation of the Lord. And still, he also wasn't happy. He wasn't pleased. And he took this to whom? To his spiritual master, to Narada Muni. Because he wanted to figure out, why is it that I'm not just blissful, out of my mind? Why am I not just experiencing ecstasy at every step? So this seems to be a little bit of a conundrum. So we wanted to address that, but also wanted to look at a couple of other points. 3 main points we're going to look at today. The first one is specifically the topic of determination of intention. So there's a word in the Sanskrit that is mentioned twice. I don't know if anyone picked up on that, but we're going to look at that. The second one is being completely liberated, but still here in the material world. And then the last one is that the goal has been achieved, but we're not happy. So these are the 3 points that we'll discuss today. So, anyone remembers what the word was in the Sanskrit, and word for word that was repeated a couple of times? Sankalpa, exactly, Sankalpa. Anyone knows what Sankalpa means? A vow, a desire. Yeah, it's similar in English to like resolution. Like we have New Year's resolutions. Like we make a resolution. I am resolved to do this, to accomplish this. But it's it's really heartfelt, and it's often a vow not only to oneself, but before God. So if you ever sit at a yajna, all yajnas start with a sankalpa, which means you make a determination. You make a dedication of what I'm about to do. So like that, we can give a vow or an intention that we're resolved to accomplish or do something. So this word is used twice. The first time it's sankalpa jam, which means the desired result. So Dhruva Maharaj he was ekeha, was he not? He was ekeha in he was not bahushaka. He was not many-branched. And he was very clear that when he went to the forest, that he wanted to accomplish one thing specifically. And you could say it was sort of like a revenge even. His motivation was not exactly so pure. He wanted to achieve a planet higher than Lord Brahma's. And he was fixed on that. So much so that even when Narada Muni showed up on the scene and said, "Come on, Dhruva, your mom's worried about you, you're just a young boy. You should really give this up and go home, Just let go of your kind of, revenge or upset and just go home. Be peaceful. Play with the other boys." And what did Dhruva Maharaj say? No way. He said, "Actually, Narada Muni, unless you've come here to give me some good instruction, don't give me that instruction because I'm not going to follow that. So best is that you leave because I'm not going anywhere." And Narada Muni, it's described by the acharyas that this was a test of Dhruva Maharaj, his determination, his sankalpa, his dedication to this idea, his resolution of achieving a planet all his own. In fact, I met a devotee once, and he had just moved to the area where I was, and we were walking and talking, and he said, "Is it wrong that I want the same thing as Dhruva Maharaj?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I want my own planet too." That would be great. And I said, "Well, it worked for Dhruva Maharaj, but I'm not sure how well it's going to work for you, so you might want to lower the bar a little bit." But anyway, so the point is that we also may come with some material desires, because it certainly is a material desire. But he had this sankalpa, and then Narada Muni instructed him that simply you can worship the deity and chant this mantra. And what was the mantra that he gave him? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So by chanting this mantra and worshiping the deity, then you'll achieve success. And he did that with full dedication and determination. So this idea of sankalpa or determination. Now often what I find in myself and also amongst devotees is, should we set goals? Should we make plans? Someone once said to me that if you want to make God laugh, show him your plans. And I thought, wow, that's great. What do I do with that? And for years there was kind of this sort of, again, a conundrum, a confusion to make plans or not to make plans, right? Should I have a determination? Should I have a specific determination? Also the question, what is my dharma? Because we should always act according to our dharma, but what is my dharma? What is my assigned duty? What are my duties according to my nature, right? Dharma in Bhagavad Gita means, Krishna is saying again and again to Arjuna to act according to your dharma. And his dharma is very specific because he is a Kshatriya. And Krishna is trying to get him to fight. And he wants to renounce. He wants to go to the forest and chant Hare Krishna and just be happy, But Krishna is saying, no, you have to act according to your dharma. Otherwise, you won't be happy. So first we have to also act according to our dharma. So we have this conundrum, this question, this confusion about what should I do, how should I do it. Last night we were at Matchless Gifts for the Prabhupada Meditations program, and we were reading from Satsvarup Maharaj's book, Life with the Perfect Master. Really recommend it if you haven't read it. So Satsvarup Maharaj is such a prolific writer and so expert at sharing. And it's interesting, as we're reading through the book, Satsvarup Maharaj at this point had become the personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. Now, what if you had the opportunity to become the personal servant of Srila Prabhupada? What would you think? Would it be like, yes? Who here feels a little like nervous, like if I got asked to be Prabhupada's personal servant? From what I understand, actually, you should have been very nervous, because most of them didn't survive, kind of thing, because Prabhupada was very he wanted things on time, he wanted things clean, he wanted things done in the correct and proper way, and he wanted it done when he asked for it to be done. When he rang the bell, ding, 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 you were meant to be there. When it was prasadam time, it was meant to be there. So it was very intense service. So Satsvarup Maharaj got this service, and he was serving Srila Prabhupada. But he writes how often, while traveling, and imagine you're traveling with the Acharya, right? The Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, traveling around the world to all the different centers where all the devotees are ecstatically, Jai Prabhupada, and you're right there beside Prabhupada, serving Srila Prabhupada, seeing the world. I mean, there's so many things to be ecstatic about. But Maharaj shares how often he was feeling and thinking, oh, maybe I should go back to preaching. Maybe I should go back to being a GBC, because he was actually GBC of a large section of North America before he took up that service. And he's often contemplating, maybe I should be doing something else, which is very interesting. First, all glories to Maharaj's humility for being open and vulnerable to share in that way. But if you read also Shrutakirti Prabhu's book, he's often doing the same thing. But last night we were hearing in Satsvarup Maharaj's book that Nanda Kumar showed up, who was a devotee who had gone away and had some difficulties, but he came back and Prabhupada wanted him to be his personal servant. So Satsvarup Maharaj was relieved of his service, and immediately he felt morose. He was like, oh, but I wanted to do that service. Then in the next day he saw Nanda Kumar walking with Prabhupada, and he was thinking, oh, that should be me. And he's like, but he had some ecstatic interactions with his godbrothers. His trajectory was to go back to being GBC, but still now he was on the other side of the fence, and he couldn't help but look over the fence and think, oh, I want to be over there. Then a couple of days later, Nanda Kumar wasn't, cutting it. So Prabhupada cut him, and he asked Satsvarup Maharaj to come back in and do it, and Satsvarup Maharaj was very ecstatic, and then 2 days later he was looking over the fence again. Oh, I was really excited about going back to be GBC and preaching. So we were contemplating how fickle the mind is. No matter where we're at and how perfect the situation may actually be, we still often think, maybe I should be doing something else. Maybe I should be somewhere else. Maybe I should even be someone else. Often we're not even happy with who we are. We think we have to become something other than what we are. Although, of course, God already made us perfect and complete. Om Purnamadi Purnamidam. We may need to transform, but there are certain things, just like Arjuna, he wasn't going to become something or someone different. He had to be happy with who he was. So it's an interesting conversation and contemplation about understanding who we are and trying to become actually satisfied and happy with the service that we have, while at the same time balancing trying to grow and trying to also improve, right? Because it seems, again, like an oxymoron. It seems like Yeah, how can you do both? How can I be happy and at the same time aspire to do better? So this is Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. So this principle of sankalpa means that actually we do need to have some determination. We do need to have some vrat, some vow that helps us to be focused on where we want to go, while at the same time we should expect that we're probably going to flicker here and there. But we need the help of the other devotees around us, the help of the spiritual master, to help keep us on track with that dedication and determination. So Dhruva Maharaj had all these things, and he achieved his sankalpa. And he actually became liberated. He achieved the goal. The Lord came personally, touched his head with his conch, and said, "You're perfected. Your life is perfected. I'm going to grant you the planet that you desire." In fact, it's not just any old planet. It's Dhruva Loka. It's the pole star, and it's the planet where the Lord personally resides. On that planet is the island of Shweta-dweep, where the Lord resides as Kshirodakshai Vishnu. And that's going to be your planet. I mean, people get excited about winning the lottery. This is the creme de la creme. He's going back to the planet where the Lord personally resides. I mean, isn't that amazing? Basically, what it means is he's liberated. He is liberated from this material world. But just like many other persons in the Bhāgavatam, they achieve the perfection of seeing the Lord eye to eye, getting his personal darshan, just as all of you are getting here. But they still have to function day to day. Prahlad Maharaj was personally saved, patted on the head by Lord Nrsingadev, said, "You and however many generations, depending on where you read, 21 generations, 7 generations before, 7 generations behind, they're all liberated." Not only was Prahlad liberated, but his entire dynasty was liberated, and they were all demons. And still Prahlad had to take up the service of becoming the king of the Daityas, even though he was liberated. So this is also a very interesting fact that Dhruva Maharaj, although he received perfection and he received liberation, he was freed from everything, still he had to do something. And sometimes we can fall into the misconception that we just want to go back to Godhead, and what that kind of means is, when will the transcendental airplane come and take me out of this despicable place? When will I become free from all of this hassle, all of this aggravation, all of this miserable suffering condition, right? Anyone here is thinking a little bit like that? If not, oh God, you're all on a very exalted platform. I mean, if the transcendental airplane shows up, you all can stay here, okay? I'm going to get on it, and I'll see you later, all right? No problem. So we're thinking going back to Godhead basically means escaping, if we're honest. We actually kind of still have the idea of escaping. We want to get out of this place, which is also tainted with a little bit of a materialistic conception, because I want to escape so that I can be happy and free from suffering. And so who's kind of in the center? Kind of me, yeah. Kind of it's all about me. But you know what, Krishna, I'd be really grateful if you could help me out with that sort of thing. So Krishna sort of becomes like the order supplier, right? I want to go back to Godhead for who? For me. So Prabhupada would often talk about the concept of going back to Godhead, and that is our goal. The thing is that going back to Godhead isn't just a proximity of a space or a place or a trajectory. It is a consciousness. So going back to Godhead means that I'm always with Krishna. So that means even while I'm still here in the material world, I have to carry on. who was a king, King Chitraketu. He also had darshan of the Lord, got blessings. And he wound up having to take birth as a demon and have his head cut off by Indra. I mean, this is some pretty frightening stuff, right? Again, the conundrum of like, really? Is that what happens? But the point is, as Prabhupada would also say, that on the ultimate level, the pure devotee isn't fussed about going back to Godhead. The pure devotee just wants to be wherever Krishna wants them to be, whether that's in the heavenly planets or even if it's in the hellish planets. Wherever the Lord wants me to serve, I am simply a servant. Gopi Bhartur Padakamala Yor Das, 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 Anudas. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, in my next birth, let me take birth as a bug. As a bug. But let that bug live in the house of your devotees so that I can get some prasad, some remnants. So like this, again, it's sort of a contemplation of a conundrum, of a challenge to our own mundane conception of what actually it means to achieve perfection. So Dhruva Maharaj achieved perfection. A 6-year-old boy, his life is already perfect. But he still has to continue life in that body. He still has service to do. So I was thinking, because Prabhupada said, and we can find so many different quotes, that if you simply chant once the Hare Krishna mantra with a sincere and pure heart, then you are considered liberated. Now, of course, I remember reading that in the 6th canto and then I went for a japa walk, and I was chanting, thinking, well, why do I even need to chant anymore? I must have now, it's been about 4 years I've been chanting Hare Krishna, 16 rounds every day. I must have chanted at least one holy name pure. So there's no need to keep chanting, because I've already achieved the goal. I'm already liberated. But I certainly wasn't necessarily feeling liberated. And at that point, was I liberated if I wanted to liberate myself of connection with the Lord through His divine holy names? No. But it is quite possible that I did at some point chant a holy name purely. But the next day you still have to chant your rounds again. Haridas Thakur, even we were recently in Gita Nagari for Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's Tirubhav, 20-year Tirubhav ceremony. And I was remembering how even in his final days in the mood of Haridas Thakur, he was still trying to chant his rounds, literally lying on his deathbed. And devotees were like, Maharaj, you've already chanted enough. And he's like, no, I gave my word to Prabhupada. I promised my spiritual master that I would chant my rounds. And he was fighting to chant. And the same, Lord Chaitanya said to Haridas Thakur, you don't need to chant anymore. You're a liberated soul. And he said, no, I have to chant my rounds. So the point is that even we may think we've achieved, or we may even have achieved this state, because just look where we are. I mean, we take it for granted when you come. When you first come, you don't. When you first come to the temple and into the association of devotees, I remember my mother once, she went to New Vrindavan, and she just dropped me off and stayed for like half an hour when I was a new devotee. The Festival of Inspiration was happening. She met Radhanath Maharaj. She met so many senior devotees. And then she left, and when I went back, I said, Mom, what did you think of it? And she said, oh, that place is so pure. And I was kind of like, what are you talking about? Because I had become mundane and covered, but she was seeing, she said, everyone there was glowing. She said, I felt so impure. She said, I don't know if I could be in that place all the time because everyone there is so pure. And when she said that, I thought, how impure am I that I take so for granted all of these things. But someone, when they first come in, they're like, wow. You remember when you first came? They're like, wow. Then after a few weeks, you're like, yeah. A few months, you're like, yeah, whatever, It's like, why do we keep getting this prasadam, Why the deity's wearing the same outfit, and why do I got to do this? And right, I'm sure none of you are in that space, but the mind is fickle, right? So we can get to that point. But the point is, even in a liberated condition, we still have to carry on with service. Service continues in the spiritual world. It's not like everyone in the spiritual world is Om. That's a different type of liberation. And that doesn't last. So even you go back to the spiritual world, and every day you're still doing some service. Because that's what bhakti is. It's devotional service. So it continues. So it's, again, not surprising that every day we still have to get up and recreate ourselves. Every day we have to recommit to the sankalpa of being determined to chant our rounds, being determined to follow the regulative principles. Prabhupada said, someone asked Prabhupada, what do we need to do to follow regulative principles? He said, you need to be determined. And they said, but what if I don't have the determination? And I think he said you can pray to have the determination. He said, what if I don't have the determination to pray for the determination? He said, then you are an animal. It's pretty frightening. So we have to every day push to achieve that state again. So every day is going to be a wrestling match with the holy name. Maybe not every day, but every day we need to be prepared to chant with enthusiasm, to serve with enthusiasm. I am talking too much and running out of time. So the last point, yes, is that the goal is achieved, but I'm still not happy. So again, coming back to this point, maybe, probably many of you are not relatively new, living in the temple, committing to Krishna consciousness. So in the beginning, it was like, oh, if I could just live in the temple, right? I remember that. Ooh, really? I can stay here? I can stay in the ashram? Wow, that's amazing. And after a couple of years, it's like, you get in this other space. But in the beginning, it's really, so we achieve the goal. Then what happens? No, not happy. Now what? Oh, now I want to get initiated. Yeah, okay, I'll work hard for that. And then I get, Swaha, your name is, and you're like, yeah. A few days later, you're like, wow, what's happening? Right? I thought that was it. I thought Gurudev was going to take all my karma away. And I was just going to be like, yeah, every day, happy, bouncy, and nothing to worry about. But guess what? Hey, a few days later, you're like, you definitely feel a change, beyond the shadow of a doubt. There is definitely a transformation that takes place. But still, it's like the material world. This platform right here, I'm not going to do a little test. That's pretty clean. If you just leave that space till tomorrow, there will be dust. Every day in the material world, the dust of the material energy is settling on our hearts. And every day we have to clean. Every day we have to clean. Whether you like it or not, whether you're a liberated soul or not, you have to do the cleaning process. Because if you don't clean, then it gets dirty. And it builds up and it builds up and it builds up. So the goal not achieved, or rather the goal achieved but not happy. So there's a verse. Let's finish with this. Chatur vida bhajante mam anasukritino juna arto jigyasur artarti gyani cha bharatar sabaha. So this verse explains that there are 4 types of people. And Dhruva Maharaj is one of these personalities, right? So what are the 4 personalities? Those who are distressed, those who are looking for wealth, those who are inquisitive, and those who are seekers of knowledge, yes. So actually the Acharyas describe that there are 4 personalities from the Bhāgavatam that also represent each one of these. Do you know what those are? Who represents the distressed? Gajendra, yes. He was in a pretty distressful situation. And what did he do in his distressful situation? offered the lotus up to the Lord and began offering prayers. Yes. Who is inquisitive? Yes, perfect. So it's described Shaunaka Rishi and the sages of Naimisharanya. Also in another place I saw that Uddhav is sometimes referred to as someone who is inquisitive. But generally we say the sages. And who were the seekers of knowledge? The four Kumaras. Yes, they were seeking knowledge. So what's left? Wealth. And who wanted wealth? Dhruva Maharaj. He wanted his own planet. I mean, people fight for little plots of land here on earth. He's like, forget a little plot of land. I want an entire planet. He obviously wanted, and he wanted to be recognized as being greater than his father. So it's described like this, that there are four kinds of people that come, and Krishna explains that these four kinds of people, they are pious. They are all pious, and they are my devotees. But they're not actually practicing pure devotional service because they are motivated in some way. But at least they're coming to me. At least they're coming to me. So like that. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, these four kinds of persons come to the Supreme Lord for devotional service and are completely purified by the association of a pure devotee. They also become pure devotees. As far as the miscreants are concerned, for them devotional service is very difficult because their lives are selfish, irregular, and without spiritual goals. But even some of them, by chance, when they come in contact with a pure devotee, they also become pure devotees. So we need to come in contact with a pure devotee. Arjuna Prabhu is a pure devotee. You've come in contact with him, definitely. And Srila Prabhupada, we've come in contact with the pure devotee. We've all come in contact with the pure devotee. So therefore there is some hope. For me, for all of you, you've already achieved perfection. But for me, I'm just hoping one day that something can happen. And of course, the verse that explains all of this very clearly from the Bhāgavatam, Savaipum samparo dharmo yato bhaktir adhoksajeya hoituki apratihata yatma suprasidati. That the supreme dharma, we were talking about dharma earlier, what is my occupational duty? What is the supreme occupational duty for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Then the qualifier, that devotional service has to be ahoituki apratihata. It has to be unmotivated. And it has to be uninterrupted. So I've heard explained by different senior devotees that uninterrupted doesn't mean that there won't be tests and maybe even some challenges, and maybe it even gets a little interrupted, but we still come back and pick it back up. But obviously, as long as it remains uninterrupted completely, then the trajectory and the movement continues more steadily. And unmotivated, that's not so easy. So, just like Dhruva Maharaj, he had serious motivation, but even in a motivated state, he still achieved because he got also the association of a pure devotee, Narada Muni. So Narada Muni instructed him, he followed the instructions, and he achieved his goal. But he's still not feeling completely satisfied and happy, because he's now reflecting on the fact that I was motivated. I had some ulterior motive. I thought I was going for the diamond, but actually it was just broken glass. What a fool I've been. So the interesting thing is even in this state of dissatisfaction, he's still remembering the Lord, and his dissatisfaction is coming from the fact that he feels he didn't please the Lord. So it's still in connection with the Lord, the same as Vyasadeva. He wanted to please the Lord, and he was thinking, I don't think I've done it correctly. So sometimes when we're feeling this, why am I dissatisfied? I'm trying to please the Lord. Then we should take the opportunity to approach a senior devotee. Approach someone and saying, how can I please the Lord? I'm not feeling necessarily that I'm doing something correct. And even that space, that is Krishna's impetus to assist us and help us to make progress like that. So I've gone over time, I think. So I'll conclude here. I don't think is there time for maybe one question or reflection? Anyone has any reflections? Please forgive me for just talking so much, so fast. I know what that means. It means it's been a long morning program and we're hungry.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hari Hari.
Thank you so much for the class. You mentioned about the funny quote on if you tell your plans to God, then God laughs.
Yes.
Then you came back to the point on we should be determined.
Yes.
And we should have a sankalpa, and we should take shelter of devotees to stay aligned.
Yes.
Should we have a plan or not? And should it be just based on our spiritual life, but life in general? Should we have any plans regarding that or not? How should we think about it?
Beautiful. Nice question. And please forgive me that wasn't kind of made so clear. But it's still an ongoing question. In the 11th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, I think it's verse 32, Prabhupada says some interesting things. One thing is that Krishna says to Arjuna, basically all these people here are already dead. I'm going to kill them all. Okay, they're going to die, whether you do anything or not. But you have the option and the choice to do it. You can be the instrument, right? You can become the instrument if you want. But you have to make that conscious decision. Krishna's already got the plan. That's the kind of idea. He's got the master plan. We're just trying to make micro plans. But in the purport there, Srila Prabhupada says something that I've always found as a confirmation to make plans. And we can't think for a moment that Srila Prabhupada wasn't making plans every single day. He sat here or up in his room at Matchless Gifts at 22nd Avenue with a globe, spinning it, saying, we're going to go here, we're going to go there. He said to the guys sitting on the bench, I have temples, I have devotees, I have books. We can't think for a moment that Srila Prabhupada didn't have a plan, or he would have never got on the Jaladuta. He would have never translated the Bhāgavatam. He had so many plans. And so after he went to Russia, he came back and he said, even things that are going on now have exceeded my expectations. So Prabhupada had major plans. And in that purport, he says, the plans of the devotee are as good as the plans of the Lord. So you can look that up. And he qualifies it, that the devotee has to also be following the spiritual master. Second part of your question is, do I make plans just for my spiritual life, or shouldn't I worry about my material life? So the question is, why is there some separation? We have this tendency to think that what I do at the temple is spiritual, and then once I leave, maybe I put on my jeans and my t-shirt, and then, I'm not really so spiritual anymore. But the case is, I'm still a spirit soul, right? That never changed. God's still in my heart. That also never changed. No matter what I put over myself, I'm still a spirit soul in relationship with Krishna. So therefore, we should carry Krishna in our plans for whatever we do. Dhruva Maharaj went back to be the king. Prahlad Maharaj went on to be the king of the demons. That could be pretty materialistic, but he was a liberated soul. He's revered as the pure devotee that Krishna manifested the Sringadev form just to protect. What he's doing is not material, because he's constantly trying to understand how he can perform the activities in this material world, even in a liberated state, even in a state of consciousness where I'm perpetually trying to do it as an offering to Krishna. Go to school, go to work, get married, raise children, buy a car, buy a house, whatever it is that we need to do. We think, oh, that's all material proof. I just need to renounce all that. That is not what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna wanted to renounce everything. And he told him, no, you got to get back out on the battlefield and be who you are and fight. There may be for some that all of that, renouncing all of that is the perfect path. That's their dharma. It may or may not be yours. I can't testify to that. You need to figure that out for yourself. That's our journey. But whatever it is that we do, it shouldn't be a distinction between what's spiritual and what's material. The only distinction, as Bhāgavatam seed verses explain, the only thing that creates Maya is the absence of Krishna. So whatever I'm doing, this computer is absolutely Maya. But I use it for Krishna service. Prabhupada said, the person who invented the dictaphone never thought it would be used for spiritual purposes. So the dictaphone wasn't material. I think the dictaphone is next door, isn't it? Prabhupada had those shoes, those pointy shoes that are over there. They're just some rubber shoes from India. Dime a dozen, probably even less than a dime. But now we've bronzed them or gold-plated them, and they're like worshipped. What is material is the fact that I have not allowed Krishna to enter into this thing. Rasoham apsakunteya. I'm drinking water. How material can that be? But no, I'm not drinking water. Krishna is the taste in this water. Now, it's fully spiritual. Prasad. One moment, it's boga. Next minute, it's prasad. As if by magic. But what's the magic? I added Krishna. And then it all becomes spiritual. Prabhupada said the zeros, you know the story of the zeros? He was asking the devotees, what's this, what's that, and they said family, education, intelligence, money, all these things. He said they're all zero. Oh, did he say, he said jiro, jiro. And he said, but if you add a 1, it gives value to all the zeros. So the material becomes transformed into spiritual by simply adding Krishna. Does that answer your question? Hari Hari. So I think we should probably finish now. I don't want to get into trouble. And I don't want you to starve. Is that okay, or? Yeah? Okay. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj, Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Jai Nitai, Gauda Premanandi, Hare Hare Bol.